the quiet early morning of August 26, 1980, at Harvey's Resort Hotel and Casino in Lake Tahoe, Nevada, a night supervisor named Bob Vinson noticed something strange on the second floor. A massive metallic machine, unlike anything seen before, was sitting silently in the employee corridor. No one had heard it being moved in. No one saw who left it there, and yet, it was placed perfectly, resting on wooden blocks sunk deep into the carpet as if it weighed hundreds of pounds. Bob's instincts told him this wasn't just a machine. Something was very wrong. The strange device left in the corridor was unlike anything Bob Vinson had ever seen. It wasn't a piece of hotel equipment, nor did it resemble a household appliance. This was something else, something deliberately built with purpose and precision. The core of the device was a heavy, welded steel box. Its surface was seamless, polished just enough to conceal the welding marks, suggesting the handiwork of someone meticulous, maybe even obsessive. Mounted on top was a smaller unit that resembled a control panel, but this was no ordinary panel. It contained 28 switches, each carefully aligned, each wired with painstaking accuracy. Whoever built this machine wanted it to look intimidating, complex, and, most importantly, untouchable. Bob's unease grew as he inspected the surrounding area. The corridor's doors, which normally led to employee rooms, storerooms, and maintenance closets, had all been sabotaged. Their locks were sealed shut with industrial-strength adhesive. No key could turn. No door could open. The implication was clear. No one could easily escape or intervene. Whoever left the device here wanted total control of this section of the hotel. Then came the most chilling discovery. On the floor, directly beside the steel box, lay a plain white envelope. It was addressed simply, "To Harvey's management." Bob hesitated, his pulse racing. He alerted security before anyone dared to touch it. When the envelope was finally retrieved and opened, its contents only deepened the mystery. Inside was a neatly typed 3-page document. The words carried an icy weight. At the top, in bold letters, it read, "Warning for hotel management and bomb squad." The letter explained that the steel box was no ordinary object. It was a bomb, an extremely sophisticated and dangerously sensitive one, according to the message. Even the slightest interference could trigger an explosion. Tilting it, bumping it, or even attempting to flood it with water would set off an internal mechanism designed to detonate instantly. The instructions were disturbingly detailed. Inside the machine were float switches, devices that could detect changes in air pressure or the presence of liquid. If firefighters tried to douse it, the pressure alone would cause it to explode. Even the screws on the top panel were booby-trapped. If twisted even a quarter turn, the wires connected to the screws would trip the detonation system. The letter described the device as being so fragile that the faintest disturbance, something as minor as brushing against it, could trigger catastrophe. It was, in essence, a bomb designed to be impossible to disarm. And it wasn't an idle threat. The instructions emphasized again and again, the bomb was real, the danger was real, and any attempt at trickery would result in disaster. For Bob Vinson and the authorities now gathering at the scene, the message was crystal clear. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't a test. This was a hostage situation. Only the hostage wasn't a person, but the entire hotel itself. And the clock had already started ticking. The moment the letter was read, there was no time to waste. Hotel staff moved quickly through hallways, knocking on doors, urging guests to leave behind their belongings. Nearly 600 people, families, vacationers, gamblers who had spent the night at the casino, were ushered into the cool Nevada morning air. The parking lot transformed into a makeshift evacuation zone, filled with confusion, whispers, and fear. For many, it wasn't clear why they were being rushed out, but one glance at the swarm of police cruisers, fire trucks, and unmarked federal cars made it obvious. Something extraordinary was happening inside Harvey's Resort Hotel. Within hours, the building was surrounded. Local law enforcement secured the perimeter, firefighters stood ready, and FBI agents took command of the operation. The mood was tense but focused. This wasn't a false alarm, and everyone knew it. The device planted inside wasn't an empty threat. The letter had made that chillingly clear, and experts were about to confirm it. The ransom demand was straightforward but immense. $3 million in unmarked used $100 bills. No chemicals on the bills, no tracking devices, no tricks of any kind. The money had to be delivered exactly as instructed, or the bomb would go off. And the method of delivery was as bold as the device itself. The letter outlined an elaborate plan. The ransom would be airlifted at night by helicopter. The pilot was to follow a sequence of signals, flashing strobes, hidden notes, precise landing coordinates, revealed one step at a time. The criminals controlled the game. One wrong move, one deviation, and the entire hotel would be reduced to rubble. Inside the sealed-off corridor, bomb experts worked under unbearable pressure. The FBI brought in specialized teams who began probing the machine with every tool at their disposal. X-rays revealed a dense, layered interior. Cylinders lined the bottom compartment. Wires stretched across the frame, each one connected with meticulous precision. Sensors, tilt mechanisms, and float valves were clearly visible. The descriptions in the letter were not bluff. The warnings were real. Even the faintest interference could trigger a catastrophic explosion. The box was, in every sense, a masterpiece of criminal engineering. Whoever had built it wasn't improvising. This was the work of someone with technical skill, patience, and an almost obsessive attention to detail. Its purpose wasn't just destruction. It was psychological warfare, designed to paralyze decision-making and buy the criminals time. As hours passed, the standoff deepened. The sun rose, then fell, and tension grew with the approaching deadline. Every second without progress was another second closer to disaster. FBI negotiators and tactical planners debated their options, weighing the risks of payment against the dangers of defiance. The ransom instructions seemed almost impossible to follow without error, but ignoring them could doom the hotel and everyone nearby. Finally, the decision was made. Agents would comply. A helicopter was prepared, loaded with what appeared to be $3 million in cash. As night fell, the chopper lifted off into the black sky, its pilot scanning for the first signal. But then, the plan faltered. In the darkness, confusion reigned. The pilot circled aimlessly, unable to locate the exact drop point described in the cryptic instructions. Miles away, hidden in the shadows, the criminals remained unseen. They had played their hand perfectly, outsmarting authorities in a dangerous game of cat and mouse. And inside Harvey's casino, the bomb continued to tick silently, a steel giant holding an entire resort hostage. The moment had come. Inside Harvey's resort, the steel box that had held an entire hotel hostage sat silent and inscrutable. For nearly a day, it had been the focus of a massive, wrenching effort: evacuation, surveillance, X-rays, and endless deliberation. Now the FBI's bomb squad believed they had a plan that minimized risk. A controlled detonation designed not to destroy the device outright, but to neutralize its most dangerous components. It was a decision born of calculation and cold necessity. Anything else risked the lives and structure they were sworn to protect. Technicians moved with methodical calm. The corridor that once had held only a mysterious box now hummed with focused activity. A small secondary charge, carefully calculated in size and placement, was set against the machine. It wasn't meant to obliterate the device, rather, it was intended to detonate the triggers and mechanisms connected to the control box, severing the delicate wiring and snapping the sensors into harmlessness. Every placement, every wire, every inch of tape was double-checked. Radios crackled with concise commands. Nearby, members of the fire department and structural engineers stood ready to assess any unexpected damage. At 3:45 p.m., the countdown began. Voices were muted, breaths held. "Fire in the hole!" came the terse command, an order that would release all the tension compressed into the last 24 hours. The button was pushed, the small charge detonated, and the corridor answered with a violent, terrifying roar. The blast wave ripped through the hallway, throwing dust and debris into the air. Windows trembled in their frames. Paint flaked from walls. For an instant, time seemed to fracture. Ear-splitting noise, rushing air, the world rearranged in a violent exhale. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the chaos subsided. The smoke rolled and thinned. Teams moved in with cautious speed, scanning for secondary hazards, watching for intact triggers that might yet respond. The machine lay in a wrecked, smoking heap, but it had not done its worst. The controlled charge had done what planners had hoped. It had severed key wiring and deactivated the most sensitive mechanisms without detonating the core of the device in its most destructive potential. When bomb technicians finally opened the remains and performed a detailed examination, the outcome offered a bittersweet relief. The device had not contained TNT, the high-energy explosive that can level structures with terrifying force. Instead, the investigators found dynamite, powerful and deadly, but less catastrophic in its yield than TNT. In practical terms, the difference mattered. Dynamite could cause serious damage and was capable of killing, but it was unlikely to bring down the hotel's pillars or collapse the entire building. That grim fact explained why, despite the dramatic blast, the structural integrity of the casino remained largely intact. Fortune and professionalism had combined that day to prevent a far greater tragedy. No fatalities were recorded. Emergency crews focused on treating minor injuries, addressing smoke inhalation, and securing the damaged floors. For the evacuees watching from the parking lot, and for a nation that would later follow the story in stunned fascination, the result was a narrow escape. Danger averted without paying the criminals the ransom they demanded. Investigators would later piece together motives and methods, but in that charged afternoon, the immediate victory was simple and profound. Lives were saved. The controlled detonation, an extreme high-stakes gambit, had worked. It was a testament to training, coordination, and a measure of luck that the worst did not happen. The hotel, scarred but standing, would be rebuilt. The psychological impact, however, would linger far longer than the physical damage. The search for answers led investigators to a man whose name would forever be tied to the Harvey's casino bombing, John Birges. At 58 years old, Birges was not just another gambler who had fallen on hard times. He was a man who had once built a thriving landscaping business, only to watch his success vanish at the gaming tables inside the very casino he later targeted. He had lost nearly everything, consumed by the hope of a winning streak that never came. What remained was bitterness, desperation, and a determination to strike back at the place he blamed for his ruin. Driven by both anger and financial need, Birges began to craft a scheme unlike anything the FBI had ever seen. He didn't act alone. His two sons, young men who trusted their father's leadership, became his reluctant accomplices. Together they designed not only the bomb itself, but also an elaborate plan to extract the ransom. For Birges, the $3 million demand was only the beginning. His true ambition went far beyond money. The letter left at the scene had instructed that the ransom be delivered by helicopter, but what investigators would later uncover was astonishing. Birges intended to hijack that very helicopter. Hidden deep in the forests surrounding Lake Tahoe, his sons had been stationed and prepared. If the FBI had complied perfectly with every step of the instructions, the chopper carrying the ransom would have descended into their trap. In that moment, Birges and his crew would have seized control, flown the cash to a secure hideout, and vanished into the wilderness, leaving authorities scrambling in the dark. It was audacious, it was risky, and it might have worked, had every detail gone exactly as planned. But reality unraveled the scheme. The helicopter drop ended in chaos. The FBI, confused by the cryptic instructions, missed the exact location. Birges's carefully staged ambush never materialized. Days later, investigators closed in, piecing together clues that traced directly back to him. His prior criminal record, combined with the technical knowledge needed to build such a bomb, made him a prime suspect. Eventually, under mounting evidence, Birges was arrested. The trial that followed stripped away the layers of mystery. Prosecutors painted a portrait of a man who had allowed his obsession with revenge and money to consume him. In the end, Birges was convicted and sentenced to 20 years in federal prison, but time would not grant him freedom. In 1996, while still behind bars, John Birges succumbed to cancer. His sons, having cooperated with authorities, avoided severe sentences, though the shadow of their father's crime lingered over their lives. As for Harvey's casino, the damage was repaired, the building rebuilt, and renovated. Guests would once again fill the gaming floors, as if the terrifying events of August 1980 had been erased. Yet the memory endured. The story of the Harvey-esque casino bombing remained etched in history, a bizarre mix of genius and recklessness, desperation and precision. It was one of the most audacious heist attempts in U.S. history, a crime that failed spectacularly, but in its failure left behind a legend. This wasn't just a bomb threat. It was a brilliant, twisted scheme that nearly fooled the FBI, terrified thousands, and became a legend in criminal history. If you found this story gripping, don't forget to hit like, share this video with your friends, and subscribe for more untold stories from history's most daring heists. Drop a comment below. What would you have done if you were in Bob Vinson E.'s shoes that night?